Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. And I'm looking at the sign right now. It says, the EdUp Experience, your higher education podcast. It's your time to EdUp at InsightsEDU 2025. That's hashtag InsightsEDU 2025 here in New Orleans, I don't know, Louisiana, at the Ritz-Carlton at InsightsEDU, a conference put on by our amazing partners, EducationDynamics, all about the modern learner. I got to tell you guys, there aren't too many conferences out there that really focus on enrollment and marketing. Two very, very important things if you'd like to grow the revenue at your college or university, which I can't imagine there is. And there's anybody out there that goes, no, we don't want to do that. So you should come to InsightsEDU. If you're not here, you're missing out. And if you didn't come, there's always next year. There's record attendance here. There's a 40% increase in attendance from the year previous. That tells me that people are really starting to wake up to the fact that enrollment and marketing really matter. We've got two people here to tell us how much marketing and enrollment really matter. Let me make sure I bring them in appropriately. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Greg Clayton. He's the president at EducationDynamics, and Katie Tomlinson, senior director of analytics and business intelligence, better known as the guru of data. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Great, Joe.
Katie, you're always so formal. I always feel like you're like it's like, hi, Katie. Hello. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you. And then when we get you off the mic, you're like, what's up, everybody?
Right.
Greg, welcome back. We've had you, and you've co-hosted. Greg, you've been a frequent co-host of mine. But, of course, I like having you on the other side of the mic where I get to ask you questions that you may not know the answer to and see you square them a little. No, I won't do that to you. We are here to talk about a very important release that you have every year, and you guys just gave a presentation on this. And this is one of the big reasons to be here is to learn about the Engaging the Modern Learner report that really details out what characteristics, trends, data of a survey that you run, talk about the modern learner and what they're after this year. So, Greg, I want to lead with you. Talk a little bit. You hit the main stage this morning. You know, you went over some really big highlights of the report. What does this report mean to EducationDynamics, to the industry, and why do we need to know about it?
It's become a really big deal for EducationDynamics, this report. For decades, we called it the Online College Student Report. It was one of our most heavily downloaded and read, talked about white papers. And we typically presented on it at every InsightsEDU conference, kind of gave a preview of it. And frankly, over a period of time when I would look at the report myself, I would find some of the results looking kind of stale, not really changing year over year. It was still some of the same things surfacing. But then probably 6-7 years ago, we started noticing some differences in things slightly changing, like age. They're becoming younger. The learner's becoming younger and younger. And then all of a sudden we noticed that age is no longer a predictor of learner modality preference, which we declared at this conference, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And then I think over the last 24 months, we also noted some other things in the data. Like not only is age becoming less relevant in classification of audience types, these different legacy classification types like traditional student, non-traditional student, adult student, post-traditional, whatever, were becoming less relevant because these students started looking all the same in terms of the value that they were seeking. So that led us to declare last year that, hey, forget about those labels and let's just start calling learners modern learners because they seek the same value. What they seek is as converge in terms of value, in terms of what they're looking for, the 3 C's that we talk about: cost, convenience, and career outcomes are the things that matter, not just to adult learners or post-traditional. It matters to all learners today. So that's kind of the background of this study.
Do you think, and Katie, I'll come to you in a second, but do you think that schools are really realizing, and you talk to a lot of people, not just your clients, but potential clients, those that maybe never will be clients, but you have conversations, we have conversations with other people who work in educational technology and so on. Are schools really understanding this modern learner concept yet? Or are we still stuck in the old ways of bifurcating into different buckets?
It's a great question. I think last year was the first time the words modern learner came out of my mouth at this conference, and we didn't really plan to say that. This is what they are, and it did catch on. It was talked about a lot. We started studying it more and using it more in our own work, and the more we talked about it, I think I discovered more interest. Tell me more about that. What does that mean, and what does this mean for higher education? But I do think that while there is work to do in evolving thinking in that, in some circles where the status quo is still kind of littered in with the silos and that are dominated by outdated and inefficient process and strategies, there are sectors of higher ed that are waking up to it and are interested in it. And we've had conversations with over a dozen schools within the last 6 months that I would say are fully awake to this concept.
And it's like a moment of, okay, we're ready now. Yeah. We're ready now to take this next step in our evolution, right? Because schools need to evolve pretty quickly. And Katie, bringing you in here because you're the data strategist, data analyst, business intelligence guru, you get to see all of this probably earlier than everyone else does, right? Because you're looking at that data and you're trying to figure out what it says. What are those moments where you looked at something and you just had this like, wow.
Inconceivable!
Like, what are those things that blew your mind?
I think one of the things that I knew we were going to find within the data was the similarities across these subgroups that we've historically referred to. They are consuming media the same way. They are consuming media with the same frequency. They have some of the same behaviors and process in their overall education journey. But the even more interesting part, I think, was understanding where those key differences were. And when you think about marketing and enrollment, it wasn't so much there as the other things that you need to be thinking, like subject demand, or the fact that it takes them longer to make decisions, or that they are potentially looking for experience at the institution. So just seeing those insights and actually being able to draw those conclusions across all of the groups and understand, here's the similarity of modern learners, here's a few key differences, was really of interest to me.
Can you think of a couple of stats off the top of your head, maybe some that you went over this morning, where one was maybe a stat that you go, you know what, that's exactly kind of what I thought it would be? And is there one or two where you go, whoa, that was a really big difference year over year, or maybe something new that you measured?
Yeah, as far as key differences, we did a lot of research this year surrounding AI and how it's being used in the overall process. And, overall, most people have adopted AI in kind of their day-to-day.
Artificial intelligence.
But when you think about them using it to search for schools, there's some really interesting differences that emerge, again, against our traditional undergrad population versus our grad population. They're more skeptical of AI. They aren't as satisfied with the results. They're using it, I think, at a higher usage rate, but ultimately, there's some things that we need to work through, and ultimately, kind of convince them of, in terms of that value and kind of that process versus what we're seeing with our other subgroups. And then as far as the similarities,
like year over year, not much change to this, but in a positive, right? Because it's not like learners go, the modern learner says, I want to enroll slower, for example. Like, year over year, that's pretty typical that speeds up, right? Right,
yeah. No, the percentage that are enrolling at the school that admits them first is high. It's 72% this year.
So say that one more time for the people in the back, Katie, because this is one that I think is so, so important.
The percentage of people that enroll at the school that admits them first is particularly high. You've got to be responsive. You've got to be in constant contact with them. You've got to move them through that funnel faster. And they expect those decisions very quickly. You've got 7% of them that expect an admit decision immediately. You've got 7% within 1 hour. You've got another, it's very, very quick. And when you think about the amount that expect to be admitted within 1 day, it's about 37% and 65% within 1 week. So if you're not moving them quickly and you're not removing those barriers, you're going to lose. You might lose to the others in their consideration set, and so you need to be thinking about that over time.
You just made the list.
That's what students want to hear. And you brought up consideration set. One more for you, Katie, and I'll go back to you, Greg. I remember last year, and my memory's a little fuzzy because I've had a lot of conversations on this podcast, so it all jumbles together. But I thought the consideration set had reduced, like it was 8 and it had gone down to 3 or something like that. Did any change to the consideration set?
So 86% are considering more than one school now. The majority in the 2 to 4 range at about 67% of the population. But if you think about that, the way that we're using search, the way that we're researching schools, the way that we're aware of brands is completely changing. And so therefore, I think we will continue to see, those that we saw the erosion. I think we're going to continue to see the growth because we're ingesting more of these search generative experiences. We're ingesting more tools for them to be able to access and research schools almost immediately. We're not just relying on paid search or the website or those types of things for them to gather information.
Yeah, Greg, back to you. And I got to tell you, man, before I ask another question, I heard a rumor that you didn't want to bring us back here this year. And I said to Tracy, your colleague, I said this.
You'll have to kill me to be finished with me.
And so here we are again, Greg. I mean, I don't know if that rumor is true, but that's what I heard. Anyway, no, it's an honor to be back with you guys here because I have a personal relationship with EducationDynamics. Used it at my last institution. Still, I see my colleagues here since I've moved on to Lucian, but I see my colleagues here. So happy with the work. And back to what you were talking about on the panel, that brand is more important than ever. That's an interesting piece because those fastest growing schools, which I know you work with many of the fastest growing schools in the country, put a lot of money and time and resource into pushing their message out to students and capturing that student when they're ready to enroll, maybe more on lead capture and less on brand. And that seems to be shifting now in this modern learner where they're very much aware of the brands around them. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what we need to do as a sector? Because, higher ed, a lot of schools are not that great at brand building. Some are smaller, they're regional. I mean, how important is brand? What are you seeing? And what do we do about that?
Great question. First of all,
I only ask great questions, Greg.
Absolutely. That's why you're here, right?
Get out of here. Let me hit that button again.
And those rumors are untrue.
All right. Fair.
So great question again. But yes, one of the things that we did for our presentation that we just had here at InsightsEDU is that we went back over 10 years and looked at some significant changes that we saw in the data. And one thing that we saw that was significant enough to make it into our presentation this morning was about brand, which, to your question.
Now listen up.
And how search has evolved to be initialized at the brand level versus the program level. So if you look at 10 years ago, search was initialized at the program level at 62% of the time. Now it's flipped. Brand is initialized about 60% of the time now. In just 10 years, that has flipped from program to brand, just telling us a lot about not only the importance of brand and a brand message, but how students are thinking about brand relative to their search. So there is a lot. We talked about the messy middle last year too. There's a lot of touch points. I think Google is on stage right now at InsightsEDU talking about this. Before I came in, I saw a messy middle site and they said hundreds of touch points.
Yep.
So they're touching an institution's brand. They're touching an institution's message. So we believe now that revenue and reputation or brand reputation are linked. They are linked at the hip. They are on the scales, and those are the two areas to focus on. And those are the core fundamental capabilities of Education Dynamics. We focus on helping institutions drive revenue and build brand and reputation.
I love the brand, and driving revenue is not something that every institution really says overtly, but the fact is this. I mean, right? If you no margin, no mission, that is a simple fact of this industry. And I am talking to more college presidents who are using these words, revenue. We need to increase our gross revenue. Now, net tuition revenue is a little bit of a different story, depending on how you discount and otherwise. But you've got to have gross revenue. You've got to reach more students. You can do that through brand. You can do that through search. You can do that through having successful graduates who come back around and have loyalty, right? So brand loyalty is another piece that I think is really important when you're talking about brand. And I heard you say it, that students are thinking, and Katie, I'd like you to chime on this too, the modern learner is thinking about learning as a longer journey than the one-off transaction. Can you talk about that a little bit and why that's significant, why we should care that modern learners are thinking that way?
Yeah, I think.
And sorry for the noise, guys, but there's a lot of action going on around here, so we're just going to talk through it.
Like you said, Joe, record attendance. It's because of you. That's why we brought you back.
I'm telling you. I mean, I was listening to your plan for this conference, and I had this to say.
I like your plan, except it sucks, so let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good.
So, when you razz me, I'm going to be ready for you, Greg.
All right.
So talk about that brand loyalty a little bit. Like, what does that mean for the modern learner to say, I believe this is more than a one-off?
Right. So we had a slide in our presentation that higher ed is not a one-time event. And when you think about, we also talked about the importance of a personalized experience. So a personalized experience involves the outreach and how a prospective students are delighted, in the process, but also the pathways that they have, not only to communicate with an institution, being flexible, meeting the student where they are, but also the pathways for learning. We talked about different persona types or different motivator types, like a skill builder or a career or earnings elevator or something like that. Those particular learners might be looking for pathways that are not traditional, like not looking for a 4-year degree kind of a commitment. They may be looking for a certificate kind of commitment. So we had a slide that Katie presented called Learning is Not a One-Time Event for the Modern Learner. And that's what we mean by that.
I like that.
Having all of these different pathways for learners and engaging with them, they can be lifelong, I hate to say this another C word, customer of an institution.
How dare you.
For all of these things as
wait, they pay for something and expect something? I mean,
I think
who
that's
knew?
the way it works.
I'd never heard of this before.
Yeah.
Katie, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and to Greg's point, 48% of the current modern learners are looking to seek an additional credential at their existing school. So right there, you have a ripe pool of people that you should be engaging with and continuing to engage with. And then we also found that 82% of our certificate seekers are planning on seeking out more. So again, you think about that population, it's not a one-time thing for them. They want to keep coming back to education. They understand how that fits into their career motivators and journey. And it's extremely important that you think about those populations in particular, because there's opportunity there that we're missing out on too.
I always say that schools are really bad at loyalty. Higher education is really bad. And you know that typically when you ask somebody if they have, where'd you go to undergrad, where'd you go get your grad, and if you're doctoral, like I have 3 degrees, 3 different schools, I can't even remember somebody telling me to stay. I have no memory of them. Versus we were in a Marriott property. You stay in Marriott's. I talk about this all the time. You only stay in Marriott's if you're a Marriott person because you get the points, because you develop this brand loyalty, this trust. And then when somebody books me in a competitive hotel, I'm like, I need to really stay in Marriott's. That's where I feel most comfortable. we need to do more of that in higher ed. And if the student is looking for that, what are we going to do as higher education to make sure we're ready when the student's ready to go next? Whether it's degree building, it's transfer credit, it's a dual credit, it's, all of these different things. And I just wonder if we're ready for this. Greg, I don't know if you're having conversations. Does the higher ed feel ready for the brand building part of this, for the loyalty building?
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, a transformation opportunity is upon us.
Yeah.
So I think it is time for a change.
That's probably why we have record attendance here, right? Because it's just people are going, okay, it's time for me to wake up and I got to do something. I did something. I mean, my enrollment's declining. I'm going to go to this conference. I'm going to figure out what people are doing who are on the upswing and try to replicate it.
There's a revenue, I said revenue again. There's an enrollment cliff,
It probably will be a revenue cliff for some. They'll go down the revenue cliff.
Yeah, that was a slip. And then, that particular thing, we are talking about that in the context of not an enrollment cliff, but an enrollment shift.
Yep.
So if you think about if you think about the modern learner, you're okay because you're not just tied to one type of audience. You're thinking about the some college, no credential audience, 36, 37 million Americans, that fit into that category. And are you meeting students where they are? It sounds like such a simple thing to do, but higher ed has such negative inertia to make change and make progress. It's a long slug. And I think you're right. It's an indicator of interest in this is the number of people, institutions that are here to learn more about how to do this.
Katie, what do you hope everybody takes away from this conference? I'll ask the same thing to Greg. I mean, what do you want them to take away from your work as the data strategist and BI lead?
Yeah, I think overall there's a lot of interesting insights we can derive from the report this year and areas of opportunity for us to continue to work on. We need to continue to focus, to your loyalty point, on creating advocates and not adversaries of their student experience. So first and foremost, you have to make sure that the students you have want to come back, that they want to be an advocate for you, that they want to promote your school, that they support your brand. There's a lot that needs to be changed in the way that we're marketing to particular old subgroups. So you think about the traditional undergrad. There was a very slow kind of process or using a lot of old types of media, and we engaged in this very, very different behavior. Shouldn't be doing that, right? We've got everybody using same platforms. They're consuming media in the same ways. They want visual. They want a lot of content. Got to deliver to them what they need now. So I think, if anything, I would say take action upon what you're seeing in the report. Take action on the areas that you're not doing a good job. And we'll continue to seek out how we can all improve as an industry.
And so before, Greg, I move to you, I just want to note for the record that every time we come into contact with Katie Tomlinson, she talks about how much she doesn't like to be on the microphone. Yet she kills it on stage and on the mic every single time. She talks about being behind the mic, but pretty good on the mic. So, that's probably why you're up on stage at the beginning there.
Sure.
Greg, what do you want everybody to take away from the conference this week? A lot of energy here.
A lot of energy. We talked about cost, convenience, and career outcomes. Don't forget the 3 C's, so those are a takeaway. And I think we also, EducationDynamics is delivering a bolder message to the market than we've ever done before, because we do have a strong set of core beliefs, and what we're doing is transformational and makes a difference in making higher education more accessible to all students.
Some of the schools you're working with are in the top fastest growing schools in the nation, so it's like you get to shout that from the rooftops, I think.
Absolutely. And one of our partners is in the top 20 nationally in Social Mobility Index, Unity Environmental University, number 1 in Maine, just to throw an example out. But we also, I think, if I could wave a magic wand, I would say that folks leave here and think that the status quo is failing higher education, and it's time for a change. It's time to think different.
100%.
That's how much we agree here at the Ed Experience Podcast. This has been another incredible episode. I thank you guys for coming back. Where do we get the Engaging the Modern Learner report now? Do you put it out immediately? Do we have to go download it somewhere?
Yeah, so it is being pre-released to our conference attendees this week.
Get it in advance of everybody else.
That's right. And we will have a release date later on this month for everyone and a webinar following that in March.
Very good. Well, we look forward to that. Greg, thanks for having us back here. Katie, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, here they are. Greg Clayton and Katie Tomlinson with Education Dynamics. You've just had upped.